For decades, Pink Floyd fans held on to one small hope. Two of the greatest creative partners in rock history, the men behind The Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall, had reunited once before, briefly, unexpectedly, at Live 8 in 2005. So maybe, someday, it could happen again. David Gilmour just answered that question. Directly, immediately, with no hedging. Absolutely not. In this video, I'm breaking down exactly what Gilmour said about ever performing with Roger Waters again, why he says he has zero regrets about the decades-long rift between them, the political rebuke buried inside his answer that's louder than anything he's said publicly in years, and how he's now actually rewriting his own set lists to distance himself from that era of the band entirely. Stick around, because by the end of this you'll understand why Pink Floyd fans are calling this the most definitive statement Gilmour has ever made on the subject. During a detailed interview, David Gilmour was asked directly by a fan whether he'd ever consider performing with his former creative partner, Roger Waters, again. Not a vague question about the future of Pink Floyd in general, a direct ask about the two of them, on a stage, together. Gilmour's response was immediate, absolutely not. And when the media pressed him further on it, he didn't soften the answer or leave any wiggle room. He clarified plainly, "There is no possible way that I would do that. That's about as unambiguous as a rock star can get. No, never say never. No nostalgic nod to the old days. No door left cracked open for some future anniversary tour or one-off charity reunion. Just a flat, complete refusal." For a band whose creative rivalry has been debated by fans for close to 50 years, that kind of clarity is actually rare. Gilmour has talked around this topic in interviews for decades. This time he didn't. Here's where the interview went from a simple no to something with real weight behind it. Gilmour didn't just say he wasn't interested in performing with Waters again, he explained why. And it wasn't really about musical differences or old grudges over songwriting credits. He said, in his own words, that he tends to steer clear of people who actively support genocidal and autocratic dictators. That's a direct rebuke of Roger Waters' public political rhetoric, commentary Waters has made over the years regarding various authoritarian world leaders and geopolitical conflicts, statements that have drawn significant criticism and controversy well beyond the music world. Gilmour wasn't vague about it, and he wasn't speaking in the coded language musicians often use when they want to imply something without directly saying it. He said it plainly. This matters because it reframes the entire Gilmour-Waters story. For years, the public narrative around their falling out centered on creative control, who really ran Pink Floyd during the Wall era, who deserved more credit, old business disputes over royalties and rights. Gilmour's recent comments pushed the conversation into different territory entirely. This isn't just a professional rivalry anymore. It's become, at least from Gilmour's side, a moral line. Given everything, the decades of public sniping, the very personal callouts that have involved Gilmour's wife, lyricist Polly Sampson, and now this pointed political rebuke, you might expect Gilmour to express some kind of wistfulness about how things turned out. Some sense of, I wish it hadn't come to this. He doesn't. When asked directly about the rift and everything that's come with it, Gilmour said he has no regrets whatsoever about where things stand. That's worth sitting with. This isn't a man expressing sadness about a broken friendship he wishes he could repair. This is someone who has clearly made peace with a permanent separation and who sees the current state of affairs was estrangement, public disagreement, zero interest in reconciliation, as exactly where things should be. For fans who've spent years hoping time might soften things between them the way it seemed to, however briefly, at Live 8 in 2005, this is about as clear a signal as they're going to get that it isn't going to happen. It doesn't stop at interviews. Gilmour has actually made a concrete change to how he performs live, and it's a pretty striking one. He's announced that he will no longer perform certain Pink Floyd staples on his solo tours, specifically naming songs like Another Brick in the Wall and Money. According to Gilmour, he'd actually been performing those songs previously against his own better judgment, meaning he kept playing them for years even when something about it didn't sit right with him. Think about what those two songs represent. Another Brick in the Wall is arguably the most Roger Waters-driven song in the entire Pink Floyd catalog, written almost entirely by Waters, thematically built around his vision for the Wall as a whole. Money, while it does include a Gilmour-written middle section, is also credited to Waters and is deeply associated with the Dark Side of the Moon era that Waters largely steered creatively. By dropping those songs specifically, Gilmour isn't just distancing himself from Roger Waters the person, he's distancing himself from Roger Waters' creative fingerprint on the music itself, much he don't like elf. even in songs that remain enormously popular and would likely draw huge reactions from any crowd he played them for. Instead, Gilmour says he's sticking to songs where he feels genuine personal ownership, tracks like Comfortably Numb, Wish You Were Here, and Shine On You Crazy Diamond. Notably, those are songs where Gilmour's own musical and lyrical fingerprints run much deeper, some of them co-written or built around his guitar work and melodic sensibility as much as, or more than, Waters' lyrics. It's a quiet but very deliberate form of reclaiming his own legacy, choosing to only perform the parts of Pink Floyd's history that feel like they still belong to him. The reaction from the Pink Floyd fan community has been, predictably, split, though maybe not evenly. One camp, which seems to make up the larger and louder group across platforms like Reddit, has largely sided with Gilmour. Many fans have pointed out that his anger is entirely justified given the severity of Waters' public statements over the years, and they've praised him publicly for standing firmly by his principles rather than putting a lucrative reunion or nostalgia tour ahead of his values. In an industry where plenty of feuding musicians eventually cash in on a reunion tour regardless of how bitter things got, fans in this camp see Gilmour's refusal as a rare example of someone actually meaning what he says. The other camp is smaller, but genuinely heartbroken. These are the nostalgic purists, fans who still hold on to the memory of that 2005 Live 8 reunion, when Gilmour, Waters, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright shared a stage together one final time, and who had quietly hoped that moment might someday repeat itself under less charged circumstances. For them, Gilmour's comments confirm what they'd feared for years. There will be no peaceful late-career resolution, no quiet reconciliation. The door that opened briefly in 2005 is now, in Gilmour's own words, permanently and absolutely closed. Almost everyone, regardless of which side of that divide they fall on, seems to agree on one thing now: Pink Floyd, as a functioning creative unit capable of reuniting, is finished. Not on pause, finished. David Gilmour spent decades being asked the same hopeful question by fans and journalists alike: could Pink Floyd ever come back together? For years, his answers left just enough room for speculation to survive. Not anymore. Absolutely not. No possible way. No regrets whatsoever. 3 separate statements, all pointing in exactly the same direction, are now backed up by the very real decision to stop performing the songs most tied to Roger Waters' creative legacy on his own tours. Pink Floyd's story, at least the version featuring both of its defining creative forces, appears to be permanently closed. If you want to go deeper on this story, let me know in the comments. I can cover David Gilmour's latest solo studio work and tour, break down the 2005 Live 8 reunion and why it turned out to be their final performance together, or dig into the massive recent sale of Pink Floyd's music catalog rights. Hit subscribe for more deep dives into the real stories behind rock's biggest bands. See you in the next one.